Hello, hello, and welcome one and all, wildlife lovers of the world, to the Africam Show, brought to you by explore.org, of course, and my name is Russell Gerber, back again to spend some time with you all, enjoying the wonderful Africam cameras all over this lovely country in the wild places of South Africa. It's great to be back, and as we kick off the show at the beautiful Olifants River with these two glorious giraffe, who I think are two males. Just before we started, they were standing off against each other in the way the giraffes do, using those long, powerful necks to fight one another. If you haven't seen it before, it does really look interesting. They swing those long necks into the midriff of their opponent. But I'm not too sure if these two are fully grown. It seems like they are. But not taking this fight too seriously. But lovely to be back with you all, as I said. Hello to Tammy, Cindy Shelton, Rolling Trouble. Says, Russell, nice to have you back. Thank you, Rolling Trouble. It's great to be back. Of course, just came back from some time spent in the wilds of Africa. I was fortunate enough to head up into the Okavango Delta, the Kalahari, and then finished off at the beautiful central and southern parts of the Kruger National Park, where we are enjoying these lovely images from right now. I must say I didn't get to the Olifants River. I spent some time around the Sand and Sabi rivers. But it was fabulous to be back in the bush for my first hosted safari of the year. But nice to be back with you all as well today to enjoy these wonderful pictures with you all. Who else is out there? Lisa White, a good day to everyone. Susie from Montana says, welcome back, Russell. Thank you. And OMG23 says, welcome back as well. Lovely to be back, OMG. Hope you've all enjoyed the shows while I've been away. I'm sure you have. Some wonderful Africam rangers filling in with different points of view and knowledge. And there our two giraffe are at it again. Looks potentially like two young males testing out their sparring skills. And Stephanie from Virginia also says welcome back. Thank you, Stephanie. As I say, lovely to be back. We often are testing the limits of technology with our Africam shows. And at the moment, I'm actually coming to you live from the wild coast of South Africa, spending some time with the family after frolicking in the bush for almost 3 weeks. But it's good to be back out in the field, seeing all these animals up close and personal. There's nothing like it. But for those of you who can't suddenly jump on a plane to come and enjoy these giraffes sparring in the wild, well, it doesn't get much better than this. I'm sure many of you are enjoying an early morning coffee or tea. Thank you for joining us this morning. And as always, folks, please feel free to send through any comments and questions that you might have on the animals, on the African wilds. If there's anything on your mind, just let us know. I'll do my best to get to them during the show. If there's anything you've seen on the cameras in the last week or so that you're interested in, or you weren't too sure about what was going on, well, just pop through those questions and I'll do my best to answer them as smartly as I can. As we see some of my favorite antelope species, the beautiful Nyala, which you can see in the background. There is a lonely impala ram in the foreground. And you can see him in the shadow there. Just behind him, a sort of lightish brown, reddish color with their stripes. And those are, of course, the Nyala. And on the left of your screen, you'll see a slightly fluffier fellow. Looks to be a young male impala. When they're born, they actually resemble the females in color. And as they get older, the upper part of their body starts to get darker, and the dorsal and ventral mane starts to grow significantly. To eventually look almost dark brown in color in the body, with, of course, those telltale white stripes. But often, quite strangely, they look like they have yellow socks on, or orange socks. But this one, still a youngster. As I mentioned to you, this is certainly one of my favorite antelope species. I find them to be just really pretty to look at. They do very well in these kinds of environments, close to the tropical regions of South Africa. As you move to the southwest or northwest of the country, you'll find less and less Nyala. They really don't do well in drier environments, so they like these tropical environs, whereas of course our impala friends, well, they do well in all sorts of environments. We saw a number of impala around the Kalahari desert region in Botswana, mixed in with a couple of other friends, of course, some springbok, gemsbok, and a huge number of zebra still around in the Kalahari. As I mentioned, those species tend to prefer the drier environs, so you wouldn't tend to find gemsbok or springbok in this region. And as many of you know, the province where Tembe is located in KwaZulu-Natal, the northeastern parts of the country, well, they've been hit hard by rains in the last month, I would say. But again this week, with heavy rainfall along some of the coastal regions. Causing significant damage in some of the towns. And Sergeant Pepper, you ask, how are things after all the rain and flooding? Well, as I said, many of those towns have suffered severe damage. As far as I've heard, I haven't heard too many issues with the lodges in the wild areas that we, of course, watch on the cameras, other than providing some much needed water in the late season for them, which will allow, as I mentioned earlier in the show, many of these herbivores to keep condition and stay a little healthier as they head into the dry months coming. And we've just popped over to Rosie's to have a little look at a mongoose. It looks to be a dwarf mongoose, perhaps looking for his friends. They're normally in little groups, which, if my memory serves, a group of mongoose is known as a business of mongoose. Dwarf mongoose in particular enjoy to be in their little businesses, as well as another species, the banded mongoose, which are quite a lot bigger than this fellow. But thank you for your question, Sergeant Pepper. Yeah, things are looking rough for the people of KwaZulu-Natal at the moment, and of course the animals in some areas. But thankfully Tembe at the moment is still okay, not too much direct flooding in that area. And then just another quick question, Rolling Trouble. When are the black eagles hatching? Apparently the 27th or 28th, so this weekend. That's what I've heard as well. Rolling Trouble. I've been off in the bush, of course, but that is the latest update I've got, so we'll have to keep our eyes peeled on the cameras. I know the guys are working frantically to make sure that the camera is up and running. So hopefully we get to catch that wonderful event very soon. And then another question from Katie. She says, last week at Tau we saw the zebras licking the white bank of the pan. Can you tell me why? It's a very good question, Katie. Again, something you often see various species do. Sometimes you'll actually see them eating the soil, which is referred to geophagy. And there's a number of reasons for this. Different species eat different kinds of soil for different reasons, but in particular, around the pan at Tau, well, it serves as pretty much a salt lick for the zebra and some of the other species there. They may be feeling low on sodium content in their diet, other minerals that they might require, and that those little banks at Tau and the white that you see in it, it's actually quite salty, and that's part of the reason why you'll actually see them licking and even eating. We got two little swallows hanging around on camera. Trying to see who we've got here. Potentially wire-tailed swallow. So I hope that answers your question, Katie, about the zebra. but you can absolutely look it up. Geophagy. It's a very interesting phenomenon, but practiced by a number of species, both herbivores and carnivores. And as our swallows are giving themselves a lovely preening, you can see our business of mongoose or mongooses. Mongooses playing around in the rocks. Of course, mongoose are, of course, the voracious carnivores, and the dwarf mongoose is actually the smallest true carnivore here in Africa. And they'll be on the lookout for all sorts of things: insects, small lizards, even other small mammals. Any birds' eggs, and even birds not paying enough attention. Well, they have been known to be captured by these little fellows, but for the most part, vast majority of their diet is insects. So you'll see them digging into the soil, often at the base of these little clumps of grass, looking for grubs. And they've only got a few, well, probably just over an hour left in the day for foraging. At night, they will go back into their burrows. Dwarf mongoose often tend to use abandoned termite mounds, and they'll retreat to said termite mound. There's a squirrel sneaking into the picture there as well. It looks like a tree squirrel. But our mongoose, or mongoose, you can tell me today what you think. Is it mongoose or mongoose? I think I know. Let me know what your thoughts are. Mongoose, mongoose. And we just crossed over to Tau, of course. Coming back to our question about the white mounds at Tau. And these little embankments that you can see. UK Dave asks, are the white mounds natural? As far as I know, Dave, they are natural. These do occur naturally, often around water holes or river systems. Particularly where there's a high evaporation rate, you often see the soils on the edges collecting this excess sodium. And entering from stage left, we have what looks to be a young-ish bull elephant. Now, I'm sure we haven't seen too many of them around. With all the rain, the elephants tend to spread into all sorts of parts of the reserves, often away from the permanent water sources that we're used to seeing them at. Yeah, not too young. Pretty good-sized fellow. They're difficult to age once they reach about 20 years old. You can look sometimes at the state of the ears and how jagged or torn they are from a life spent walking through the thick bush, and also the indentations around their forehead tend to get a little deeper, the head gets wider, So I would say this fellow, well, probably around 30 years old, I think. And potentially halfway through his life. And another little visitor on site as well. Now that one does look like a young male. So I wonder if there's any others. You often see the males hanging out in these small bachelor groups. Youngish males hanging out with older males. You almost teach them the ropes and how to live a successful life. Adult male elephants will spend the vast majority of their adult life, away from the main herds. So they'll spend a lot of time on their own or in these small little bachelor groups. But especially the younger males who've recently left the herd, they like to latch on to the older males for a little bit of security, a security blanket. And these two certainly seem to know each other. So I suspect they've spent a lot of time together already. As we move into the drier months, more and more elephants making their way down to these water sources. Of course, the elephants heavily reliant on consistent and productive water. They need to drink just about every day, sometimes twice a day, depending on the weather. It's still a good amount of water around. Here at Tau and across our various cameras as well. This younger male is clearly making a nuisance of himself. Now, I'm not sure if the two are related, if this is an older brother, but in most cases it wouldn't be. They're simply males, often from different herds, who, as I said, would spend time together. But in sort of very loose social structure, they'll often split up and go their own ways and meet up again. And Vicky says, thank you for this video. Very interesting and learned some new things. God bless you all. Thank you, Vicky. Well, it's always fun chatting about the beautiful animals of the wild, particularly something as majestic as an African elephant or savanna elephant. And let's see what some of our guesses are for whether it's mongoose or mongoose for the plural. John says mongoose or mongooses is the plural. Mary Momo is going with mongoose. She says this language we use is confusing enough. It is indeed, Mary Momo. Stephanie's going for mongoose or mongooses, but it seems she cheated. She had to look it up. Well, from my knowledge, it is indeed mongooses, not mongoose. Thank you for taking part, all of you. And it looks like we got a third arrival. And a fourth. Again, not unlikely to see this, particularly at the end of the day. After a nice hot day, the elephants like to come down in the afternoon for a drink. And as things cool down, move back into the thicker bush for feeding. And it looks like we've got the arrival of a breeding herd. Lisa asks, don't the younger bulls follow the older bull elephants to learn how to be a bull? Yeah, that's exactly right, Lisa. That's what we were chatting about. They learn the ropes, how to behave around females, where to go to find water, and of course the best food, and they'll often follow these big old males for many, many years. But it certainly does teach them some manners. And there is certainly a dominance hierarchy between those older males in those little bachelor groups. But of course, in the breeding herds, well, it's all about the ladies with a clear and very strong matriarchal society, with those breeding herds always led by a matriarch, a dominant female. Who is often the oldest, or one of the oldest, in the herd. Not always. Looks like we've got a nice mix here. But nothing much better in the world, in my eyes, than watching three beautiful elephants drinking side on in the fading light. And this is what it's all about. It's sometimes just so nice to listen to some of the sounds of nature in the background. Got a lot of noisy helmeted guinea fowl. And of course the ever-present Egyptian geese. And we've got time for one more question. Pounce asks, how long are the young males allowed to stay in the breeding herds? Pounce, it's a good question. It really depends on the herd itself and on the matriarch and senior females. More often than not, around the 20 years of age time frame, you'll find the males will slowly move away and spend less and less time with their natal herd, and eventually move away. Sometimes that can be a little earlier, and sometimes a little later, but on average I would say around 20 you'd see the males leaving the herds and spending more time on their own, or with these little bachelor groups, as we were chatting about. Well, folks, unfortunately, we've run out of time for the show. Thank you so much for taking part, for sending through your questions. It's lovely to interact with you all once again. And we will leave you with these wonderful scenes here at Tau. We'll be back again next week, of course, for the Africam Show, brought to you by explore.org. But in the meantime, enjoy the wild. Hope you can all get outdoors a little this week. If not, well, keep your eye on the cameras. You never know what you might find. But from all of us here in the Africam team, we'll see you again same time next week. Keep well. We'll see you then. Cheers for now.